Really good. Well, today I am kicking off a new series called This Is Us. And we're going to be focused throughout this series on relationships. And so today I'm going to kind of lay a foundation for us about relationships. It may be one of the more basic messages I ever preach, but I heard a pastor say one time that basic is good. If you feel like your message is good for children, it'll be great for adults. So we'll lean on that today. But today we're going to focus on just the basics. I call it Relationships 101. Next week we'll be talking about friendships. And then the following week will be marriage. And then that last week it'll be a family Sunday for us. So there won't be any children's ministry. All of our kids will be in here with us during the worship time and during the message. And so we'll be talking about parenting and being a child and dealing with coworkers and just kind of all kinds of other relationships that we all experience in life. And so be here for all 4 weeks. I think it'll be a good time, but I love to dig into relationships because I find that it's one of the toughest things to do, relationship well. I don't know if that's the right wording or not, but I find it hard to relationship well. And so maybe this message is more for me than anybody else. But let's jump in. You have your notes, I hope. You can follow along with us on YouVersion as well, the Bible app. But I don't know about you, but I love to go to the grocery store. I love to select all of the items on the list. Consuelo and I, we do our grocery shopping together most weeks. And I love to just do that and go and pick out all of the items and fill up our cart, sometimes 2 carts, because we do have 4 children that like to eat. And I love to fill those up. But what I love the most about my grocery visits is when I get up to the checkout line and I can use the self-serve checkout. Apparently, I'm the only one in the room that's ever heard of that or likes to do that. Yes. I love that I can go up there and I can put all my items on the belt. I can scan all of the items myself, and I don't have to talk to anybody. That's so bad, isn't it? I love that I can just pick up all of my things and I go there. And in fact, when I'm walking up to the self-checkout and I see people in the regular checkout, where there's a cashier, I look at them and I'm like, man, what's wrong with that person? I'm like, oh, I bet they don't know that there's a self-serve checkout. Maybe I should go tell them that there's self-serve. Don't judge me. Isn't it the greatest thing? Isn't it the greatest thing that we can go to a restaurant and we don't have to ask anybody to refill our drink for us? Like we can go up to the machine and we can refill it as many times. I can get as many Mountain Dews on my own as I want to. Like, isn't that a great thing? Like I don't have to ask somebody to refill my drink for me. Pastor, this is a terrible way to start a relationship series. I mean, when I go to a restaurant and they don't have that self-serve drink machine, I'm like, I'll just eat my ice. I don't need to go and ask somebody to do that. I don't want to interact. You guys are feeling sorry for my wife right now, aren't you? Oh man, the ATM, isn't it an invention from God? I mean, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember the days of having to walk into the bank and ask somebody to give you your money. Man, what was that about? Like I am fine to just drive up and just take my money out of a machine. I don't have to interact. Even though the bank that we were previously at before we moved down here, they moved to like a video teller, and that at least is one degree removed from having to actually interact with somebody. I mean, I had to interact with them, but they weren't physically right there. It was a video, so it's kind of like talking to the TV, which I do more than I would admit. Talking to somebody to get my money, it's so ridiculous. And now I have the app on my phone where I can just take a picture of the check and it'll just deposit it. Like I don't even have to go to the ATM anymore. That's cool. I love it. And we chalk those things up to convenience, don't we? I mean, all of those things we say, well, it's convenient, right? I'm in a hurry. I've got things to do, and so this is more convenient. I wonder how much more convenient it really is. I wonder how much time we actually save. I think we enjoy those things because it's difficult to connect with people, isn't it? I mean, it's difficult enough to connect with people we know, but how much more difficult is it to connect with people we don't know? I have a very small memory, like a very limited, it's very fuzzy. It's like the flashbacks you see in a movie where it's real blurry. But I remember going to a gas station where the attendant would come out and pump your gas and clean your windshield and do all of that stuff for you. And they had that little change thing on their thing. Remember that? Ching, ching, ching. I used to want one of those. But now it's all about self-serve. And really, is it all about convenience? I don't think so. I think we as a society, we have moved into a place where it is much more acceptable to be isolated from relationship. We make it so convenient to be isolated from others. I mean, I would submit that we are more connected than ever as a society. I mean, the internet has taken connection to greater lengths than it's ever seen before. But the truth is that very few of us are known. Very few of us know others. Very few of us are in authentic relationships. Think about our houses. The porch, the front porch. It used to be an elaborate part of the front of the house. Now, as we're building houses, as we're buying houses, we look for the house that has the biggest back porch or back patio. Or the living room. The living room, it used to be placed right up front, in the front of the house. Remember the house that I grew up with? It had a huge picture window in the front of the house. And the curtains to that picture window were only closed at night when we went to bed. As soon as the first person got up, those curtains were open. Now, living rooms are in the back of the house. Now, we don't open our curtains or our blinds throughout the day for fear that if somebody actually shows up, they might know that we're home. You're laughing because it's you. But isn't it true? Isn't it true? I mean, if we'll consider that, I can sit down. If we'll just recognize the fact that those aren't really good things. I mean, I enjoy refilling my own drink. I enjoy that I can pump my own gas. But man, I miss out on authentic connections with others, especially people I just don't know. And even the relationships we do have. I heard it put one time that we have Kleenex relationships. That we take them, we use them, and then we throw them away. And they serve our purposes. And the truth is, and I want you to hear me say this, the truth is that relationships, they can be very painful. Relationships can be very problematic. And in fact, you would think logic would actually tell you that relationships, they're just simply too hard to even try. It would make much more sense to just isolate, just be by yourself. To just say, you know what, I'm independent. I don't need anybody. I'm fine by myself. But I think there are so many truths that we've got to consider today. And the biggest truth that I would say is that there is something in every one of us that draws us to others. I think if we're being honest with ourselves, if we're being honest with one another, and this is church, we should be able to do that. That when we are the most isolated, there is still something deep within us that says, man, if I only had somebody to hang out with. If I only had somebody that would listen to me. If I only had somebody to do life with. And I think that's something that God has planted in us. And listen, isolation, it is rampant in our culture today. People get home from work and what do? They open the garage door, go into the garage, and close the garage door. There are so many neighbors around me that I've never seen. I see their car drive in and drive out, but I've never seen them. And oftentimes isolation, it's our response to a hurtful world. It's our response to those that have hurt us in the past. It's our response to avoiding the potential of pain. But listen, being alone is a terrible way to live a life. And some of us have more connections than we can even count, but we're more alone than ever. And so that's what this relationship is born out of. That's where my Holy Spirit inspired message has come from. Because as I spend more days on this earth, I am encountering more and more people that are isolated, that are alone and that are facing problems that if they had people in their life that could speak into their life, those problems wouldn't be a problem. So here's the big idea for today. I'm just going to give it to you up front. You can write this on your outline. Is that you were created for relationship. You were created for relationship. In fact, if we go all the way back to Genesis chapter 2, we see the creation of all things. And God looks at Adam and he says, it's not good for the man to be alone. It's not good, God says, for us to be alone. Yet so many of us think that alone and independent is the way to be. But yet God tells us differently. He looked down in this moment and he said, I created you for relationship with me, but I also see that that's just not it. That's not enough. I'm going to create others so that you can have relationship with others. Why? Because I know that you were created for relationship. You were created to be around other people. It's not good for you to be alone. And so what I want to do this morning is just unpack 4 things, 4 truths about relationship that if you will grab a hold of these at the end of today, then it will propel us through the next 3 weeks. It'll make the next 3 weeks pretty simple to get through, actually. And here's the first one. The first one is that relationships are messy. Relationships are messy. It's true. Somehow we've convinced ourselves that life should be easy and that relationships should be easy. We believe that if a relationship gets messy, then it just wasn't meant to be. If somebody hurts us, a friend, a spouse, a coworker, then we say, well, I guess that's just God's way of telling me we shouldn't be in a relationship together. Can I share something that's a little hard with you right now? Can you receive something from your pastor right now? The number one thing that makes relationships messy is you. The number one thing that makes relationships messy is me. That's the number one thing. Every time that I haven't felt connected or I haven't felt accepted in some certain context, it can be the church, it can be at work, it can be in my family. Every single time, if I'm being honest with you and I'm being honest with myself, I am the reason that my relationships are non-existent or not where they need to be. It's me every time. It's not that anyone else actually hurt me. It's that I make up stories about others, about the relationship that help me feel okay with pulling back or that make me feel okay with not engaging, that make me feel okay to not pursue a relationship. And can I just say, we get this wrong at church all the time. We begin to imagine that others should approach us, that others should introduce themselves to us, that others should invite us over for a play date, that others should invite us out for dinner, others should invite us to serve, others should invite us into their small groups, others. The problem's not them, it's us. Relationships are messy, and we make them exponentially more messy with our own issues. And I think the biggest illustration for this comes from the life of Jesus. Jesus, he didn't do life alone, did he? He had the disciples around him. He had the 12 that he was pouring into, and he had the 3 that were close to him, and the 1 that loved him more than others. He was in relationship the entire time. And if he was in relationship, how much more do we need to be in relationship? I mean, think about it for a minute. If the perfect Son of God needs to be in relationship with others, how much more do we need to be in relationship? And the truth is that Jesus had some messy relationships, didn't he? His relationships weren't perfect. His relationships weren't ideal. He had messed up relationships. But he never gave up on them. He never gave up on them. Here's a couple stories I want to share with you. Luke chapter 22, verse 56, it says, a servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, this man, who am I talking about? It's Peter. This man was with him. But he denied it. Woman, I don't know him, he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, you are also one of them. Man, I am not, Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean." Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed, and the Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Oh, imagine that. And then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him: "Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. In this relationship with Peter, it was messy for Jesus, wasn't it? At the very hour when Jesus needed him the most, at the very time when Peter's ministry was needed the most, at the time when he could have spoken the loudest and the clearest about who Jesus really was, not only was he silent, but he also denied ever knowing who he was. Have you ever had a friend turn their back on you when you needed them most? You ever had somebody that you really wished would call you or reach out to you because you know that they know what you're going through, but yet they remained silent? It can get messy. Here's the second one, found in Matthew chapter 26. Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over, talking about Jesus, of course. And so one of the 12, one of the closest, didn't just deny that he knew him, didn't just remain silent, but actually sought others to take part in the killing of Jesus. He betrayed him at the most significant level ever imaginable. Jesus, he had messy relationships. We will have messy relationships. Hear me say that. I will disappoint you, and you will disappoint me. I will let you down, and you will let me down. It is a truth of relationships. In marriage, I heard it put one time that if you have problems in marriage, it's because you're married. Relationships are full of messiness. They're full of problems. But listen, messiness, I believe, is a path toward deep trust and vulnerability with one another. Because messiness is the real, authentic you. You are messy. I am messy. We are not perfect. None of us are. But when we're able to be messy together, we go deeper together, don't we? And listen, I think that's what relationships are meant to be. I think relationships are meant in terms of messiness. I see your messiness, and I still love you. I see your messiness, and I still accept you. And in turn, if you'll do all that for me, man, what a profound relationship we'll have. Because I think that real relationship happens on the other side of messy. Seeing past all of the junk, all of the baggage that we all carry with us, and seeing to the person that they are and the person that they could be. So that's the first thing I want you to make note of, is this: relationships are messy. Don't buy into the fact that if a relationship gets hard, that it wasn't meant to be. In fact, that's the time to push through. That's the time when you both need each other more than ever. Here's the second thing I want you to write down, is that relationships are two-way. Relationships are two-way. Now, there is definitely a benefit to having a relationship with somebody for you. There's benefit in it for you. You receive a benefit from being in a relationship, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, I want to draw your attention to the fact that relationships are meant to be two-way. Because listen, if your only measure of the health of your relationships is what you're receiving from it, you're doing it wrong. I'll say that again. If your only measure of the health of your relationships is what you're receiving from it, you're doing it wrong. Relationships aren't what's in it for me. Relationships are what's in it for us. And that's marriage, that's friendships, that's parenting, that's coworkers, that's family, that's everything. You're doing it wrong if that's the only way you ever measure your relationships. Romans 12:10 gives us instruction. It says, "Be good friends who love deeply. Practice playing second fiddle." I like that. I don't have to be the first. I don't have to be the one. If I have to give a little more this week than I receive, it's okay. I can play second fiddle. in a healthy relationship. Philippians 2:3, it says, in humility, value others above yourselves. Man, I think that's something that our world needs today more than ever. Humility, humbleness. Because relationships that are based in humility, if you will base your relationships in what you can serve and give to the other person, then you will find that those are the relationships that are the most satisfying and the most lasting. Think about it. What would happen in your relationships, in your marriage, in your children, in your family, with your friends, with your coworkers, if your primary goal, if the foundation of those relationships were simply humility, humbleness? Humility, it's the opposite of pride, isn't it? It's putting others above yourself. It's seeing their need and saying, yeah, I have a need too, but I'm going to meet their need first. It's putting others ahead of yourself. Because listen, the Bible, it tells us dozens of times to do things for one another. In the Christian walk, in the Christian body, in church, we should be finding ways to do things for one another. The Bible is very clear, dozens of times. I think I counted up, it was like 59 different times we see one another in the Bible. Here are just a few, they're in your notes. John 13:34, love one another. Galatians, serve one another in love. Galatians 6:2, carry each other's burdens. Ephesians, be kind and compassionate to one another. Build each other up. Encourage one another daily. Pray for each other. 1 Peter 5, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another. These are what I would say commandments from the Bible. These are commands. These are not options. These are phrases that say, you know what, if you're a Christian, great, here's how you should act. And more of us need to take note of these one another's, don't we? More of us need to see relationships as being two-way. We have a very distinct responsibility in every relationship we find ourselves in to serve and to love and to be kind, to be compassionate, to encourage one another, to pray for one another. And I would submit to you that if we're not doing these things, then we're not fully following what God tells us to do. If we're not doing these things, let me say it a different way, we are being disobedient. And disobedience is a sin. And listen, the truth about this is that when you're in a good, healthy relationship, this is easy. When you're in a relationship with somebody that's rocky, it's not what it should be. These are hard. But listen, here's the truth, is that if you're in no relationship, you can't do them at all. So how do we do this? How does the Journey Church find itself as a church that does these one another's? Luke 6:31 tells us, do to others as you would have them do to you. That's how we do it. Do to others the very thing that you want them to do to you. It's really that simple. It's really that simple. Listen, if you don't hear another word from me, highlight that, underline it, circle it, remember it. We could be done right now, but I'm not going to be. Do unto others as you want them to do to you. What would it look like for you if you treated your husband in exactly the same way that you want him to treat you? What if you overlooked his annoying habits in the same way that you want him to overlook yours? Imagine if you treated your kids this way, that you responded to them as calmly as you expect for them to respond to you. What would happen at work if you began treating your coworkers or even your boss like you want them to treat you? What if you began to compliment their work in the same way that you want them to compliment your work? Or what if you communicated with them exactly how you want and expect them to communicate with you? Or what about Facebook? What if you respected others' views in the same way that you adamantly expect them to respect yours? What if you assumed the best about their inflammatory post in the same way that you expect them to assume the best about your inflammatory post? What if you extended grace to others for their typos in the same way that you need it when you misspell words like desperately? Or when you use there, and there in the total wrong way? Or when you say, here's a picture of Tim and I, when it should be Tim and me. You grammar Nazis will get that one. Treat others how you want to be treated. It's simple, but it's so hard to do, isn't it? And listen, here's where we go wrong. We sit here on a Sunday morning and we say, yeah, you know what, Pastor's right. I'm going to do that. He's right. I need to start extending more grace. I need to be more understanding of other people's viewpoints. I need to reach out to others in the way I expect them to reach out to me. And we go out and we're motivated, and then Monday comes. And you say, I'm going to try it. I'm going to give it a try. So you wake up next to your husband who's been snoring so loud that you've only gotten 5 minutes of consecutive sleep that night. But we try it. But where we get it wrong is that we give up all too easily when they don't reciprocate. Well, I tried, but he didn't. Well, I tried, but she didn't. I'm so glad the verse is still up there, because it doesn't say do unto others so they will do to you. It says do unto others what you want them to do to you. You go first. Not only do you go first, but you keep doing it. Keep doing it. Don't base your action on their action or inaction. Don't stop based on their response or their lack of response. So many marriages, listen, so many marriages would be saved if spouses would just get this. So many marriages would be saved. So many friendships would be truly lifelong if we could just do this. We would be a far more valued employee at our organizations if we would just model this for those around us. Because listen, relationships are two-way. It's not an what's in it for us endeavor. And we've got to get that. Here's the third thing. Here's the hope of the message. Relationships are worth it. As tough as it is, as hard as it can be, don't give up on relationships. Don't do it. Do not give up on the relationships that you have or the relationships that you make. It's hard. It's messy. Relationships take work. They require forgiveness. They require grace. But listen, they're worth it. They are worth it. Don't find yourself isolating and pulling back from your friends and your family. Because the truth is that when you have healthy relationships in your life, you have security. You have safety. Healthy relationships, they bring greater purpose into your life. They bring a reason for being. And listen, we are all searching for the reason for being, some more desperately than others. I would submit to you that the reason for being is others, but they're so worth it. Relationships are so worth it. Ecclesiastes 4, it's better, I love how the Message puts it, it's better to have a partner than go it alone. Share the work and share the wealth. If one falls down, the other helps. But if there's no one to help, tough. I love that. Two in a bed warm each other. Alone, you shiver all night. Let me put that in a little different context for you. When you're out there in this cold world, trying to be the light, trying to be the warmth to other people, listen, others will keep you warm when you're faced with others' coldness, with the coldness of the world. By yourself, you're unprotected, it goes on to say. With a friend, you can face the worst. Can you round up a third? A 3-stranded rope isn't easily snapped. Relationships are worth it. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again to you all. The time to begin building relationships isn't when you need them. When you're in a crisis or when you desperately need a friend, that's not the time to begin making them. Do the work before you need them. If you wait until the crisis, it'll fail every time. It'll be too late. But if you have relationships firmly in place, when you face the storms of life, you will have people that will help you. When you fall down, and you will fall down, you'll have somebody there to pick you up. We see it here with our small group structure. I'm thinking of the small group that the Spears lead. There was somebody in their group that needed them to come around them, and they answered the call. They stepped up and they stepped in and they served that other person in their small group. Why? Because they were in relationship with each other. They saw the need and they met it. Proverbs 17:17 says that a friend loves When? At all times. A friend loves at all time. And I don't know about you, but I need friendships like that. I want friendships and relationships that can truly say, no matter what you do, no matter what happens, I'm going to love you at all times. At all times. And I know for some of you here today, you desperately need a relationship like that. You need that in your life right now. You're going through something where you need somebody to say, you know what, I know what you're going through. I know the decisions you've made. I know what's happening, but I love you anyway. I'm here for you. I am not going to leave you during this. I remember a time in my life when I had made some poor decisions. And I reached out to a friend of mine, not sure how the conversation was going to go. And I remember being scared to share with him the truth of what I had done. So I shared, told him everything. And at the end of it, he said 2 words: I understand. That's it. That's it. He didn't say, Tim, I can't believe you did that. He didn't say, Tim, you should have done this. Tim, this, Tim, that. No. He said, I understand. And that man's a friend of mine still today. He loved me at all times, especially when I needed it the most. Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Listen, the truth about all of this is that we make each other better. We make each other better. The way to become a better person, the way to become a better Christian, the way to become a better pastor, parent, spouse, employee, whatever it is to be around others who make you better. In relationship with others. People ask, what's the Journey Church's path through discipleship? It's others. How do we help people grow in their faith? Others. What should I do if I want to go deeper? Get with others. Find a small group, plug in, get around other people that will rub up against you and will make you sharper, will make you better. It happens through relationship. Because when we are consistently and regularly around others, we get better. And listen, there's a flip side to that too. As much as being around sharp people make us sharp, being around dull people will make us dull. Maybe you've heard it put this way: show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Some of you here today need to look at your circle of friends, the people that you find yourself around regularly, and you need to choose differently. Some of you need to change your playmates and your playground, because you need people around you that are sharp, that aren't making you dull, that are making you better. Here's the fourth one and the last one. I want to invite the worship team to go ahead and come back up. And it's this, is that relationships are the heart of God. Relationships are the very heart of God. The very gospel story, listen, it's relationship. The gospel story is all about relationship. So many of us miss this. I've shared it before. I didn't get this until later in life. That my faith, my belief in Jesus, my being a Christian was all about relationship with Jesus Christ. It's not about going to a church. It's not about doing some rituals. It's about having a relationship. The truth is that God, the creator of the universe, wants a relationship with you and with me. And listen, relationship with Jesus Christ, it's going to be messy. It's definitely two-way. But it's so worth it. It's so worth it. Relationships are the heart of God. It's the very reason for the Garden of Eden. It's the entire story of the Bible. Relationship. Relationship. Mark chapter 12 gives us the glimpse that we need right now. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. And the second is this: to love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these. Love God and love others. That's it. That's it. Relationship. And I love that God, He tells us what to do and then He models it for us, doesn't He? Because He says that I desire a relationship with you above anything else. You, not a religious person, not me, but you. He desires a relationship with you. My biggest fear for all of you is that you'll find yourself being caught up in ritualistic Christianity, in some sort of fundamental idea of what Christianity should be. And you'll miss out on the very relationship with the one who loves you despite all of that stuff. But He models it for us. He says, all right, I'll go first. John 15:13. The greatest kind of love. He says there's no greater love than this. No greater love. That a man would lay down his life for one of his friends. And Jesus, He died for us. Why? Relationship. Relationship. And this verse has very literal meaning. And if you're literally in a place where you need to choose life or death for your friend, hope you'll choose wisely. But I think there's some figurative meaning here too. That we've got to die to ourselves in relationships. That we've got to see the things that we want and we need, and we've got to give those things up for the cause of relationship. You know me, I'm a words of affirmation guy. I love it when my wife tells me that I'm a good dad or a good provider. In fact, I would say I need those things. But I need to find how I can give those things up, that I can die to those things so that I can serve and love my wife better. We have goals, we have dreams, we have passions. Make your supreme pursuit relationships with others. And you will find that your life is much more fulfilled, much happier, so much more joy when you're doing life with others. And so Jesus would say to us right now in this moment, will you give it up for me? Will you sacrifice the things that you want and the things that you feel like you need, the things that you hold on to tightly, the things that you worship, the things that you think are more important than anything else? Will you give those things to me? Will you die to those things for me? I've died for you. Will you die for me? I want to invite everybody, just go ahead and bow your heads and close your eyes right now. You know, it says that He stands at the door of your heart, and He knocks. He doesn't bust His way in. He doesn't force His way in, but He knocks. And I believe for some in the room right now that He's standing right now knocking on the door of your heart saying, will you let me in? It's going to be messy. I'm going to ask you to give up some things. But I'm going to give you so much more. It's going to be so worth it. Because the relationship with you right now, it is near my heart. I desire a relationship with you. And if that's you, I just want to ask you to lift your hand. I'm not going to ask you to do anything or go anywhere. I'm going to just lead you in a prayer. If that's you and you want to take that step to say yes to Jesus right now, just lift your hand. I'll say, I see your hand. You can put it right back down. Anybody anywhere say, yes, that's me. Say yes to Jesus today. Okay, with every head bowed and every eye closed still, I just want to invite everybody else just right now in this moment to begin to think about your relationship. The relationship with Jesus, relationship with friends and coworkers, family members. Who is it in your circle that you need to make it right with? Maybe you would say, I can't even identify a single friend right now. Who is it that you need to reach out to? And take that risk, take that step. And get to know them and begin relationship with them. Maybe for some of you, it's your husband or it's your wife. You need to ask for forgiveness today. You need to tell them you're sorry. You need to stop making it about you. Or maybe it's a coworker or a boss that you've just been arguing with and fighting with for far too long. Or maybe it's God himself, and you found yourself mad at God. Pulling back, distancing yourself. You used to pray every day, and now you're lucky if it's once a week. You're pulling away. But you need to take that step today and say, I want to reconcile with you, God. I need you. I want you. Come into my life today. Meet me where I'm at. Relationships are tricky. They're messy. But man, they're so worth it. I'm going to ask everybody, just go ahead and stand to your feet. We're going to begin to worship God together. And as we do that, I just want to encourage you that, as you're worshiping God, maybe you want to take a posture of open hands towards God. And say, these relationships that I've been hurting over for too long, these relationships that have hurt me, the relationships where I've hurt others, whatever it is, whatever that relationship is, maybe you just want to take a posture and say, God, I release those to you. It's nothing magical about this kind of stance, but it's just a symbol to God to say, God, I'm not going to hold on to those things any longer. I'm going to release them to you. The worship team, they're going to begin to sing, and we're going to worship God, and I'll be back in just a moment.